What is happening? We have 2 episodes left. What just happened? The show feels like it just ended. I feel like I just watched the season finale, and yet we're on episode 4, friends. We are just past the halfway point. What? What? Loki, season 2, episode 4. What are you doing to us? Friends, I wish every project could be as exciting as Loki. This show so far has been so amazing and so fun, and I hope it continues to be. I have no idea really what's happening next, but I do have some really good theories that I'm very excited to discuss with you, because I think a few of them could be right, especially considering I feel like I got some stuff right for this episode. So stay tuned. Let's talk theories at the end. Let me know your theories in the comments. And before we jump into it, let me give you a quick synopsis. Honestly, a lot happened in this episode, so I don't know how quick this will really be, but I'm going to keep it as tight as I can. Having recovered Victor Timely from Ravonna and Miss Minutes, Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie all head back to the TVA. They introduce Timely to OB, thinking, you know, these are 2 geniuses, maybe they can figure out how to fix the loom together, but also, obviously, they needed Victor Timely's aura so that they can actually do anything to fix it, since everything is locked down. And after they introduce those 2, they learn that somehow, time paradoxically, these 2 have inspired each other's work. So they are literally representing a time loop. Time loops. We're going to talk about that. Meanwhile, at the end of time, Ravonna has learned the truth of her origin. Basically, she served in the Time Wars with He Who Remains and seemed to be basically his right-hand lady. And after the Time Wars were concluded, he said, you know, we're going to like rule the TVA together. However, then he went behind her back and asked Miss Minutes to wipe her memory and the memory of apparently everyone at the TVA. So some of those people probably served in the Time Wars and were allied with He Who Remains, but don't remember. After learning this, Ravonna is understandably upset, but Miss Minutes uses this to her advantage and basically says, you know, we've both been burned by He Who Remains in a way, and we don't really need him. Why don't we just rule together? So they forge an alliance. Their plan is to go in and take over the TVA, and they infiltrate that. But before they get there, B-15 approaches the Minutemen and decides to offer to them the ability to be free if they just agree to help everyone. Basically, B-15 pleads her case of, you know, I know that you all really just care about the TVA and protecting time, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to do that. We need your help. Please come and help us. We just have way too much on our plates right now, and we could really use it. The Minutemen are considering this, and as they're alone considering this, with Brad making some points about maybe why they shouldn't, and all that good stuff, and them coming back at Brad to be like, look, you like basically ditched us. Who shows up? Ravonna and Miss Minutes. And Ravonna and Miss Minutes basically want the Minutemen's help to retake over the TVA. And their counteroffer is basically that anyone that helps them, if they want to go and live their life on any of the timelines after, they'll be free to do that. Which obviously Brad is super here for, so he decides to join up, but everyone else is not about that. They say, you know, that's not why we're here. We don't need that. We actually think that y'all are pretty crazy and we refuse to help you. So they get cubed. Terribly, terribly cube crushed. Only Brad survives, and Ravonna and Miss Minutes are able to approach Victor Timely and once again recapture him, and they're trying to get his help to take over the TVA, so making him work for them. However, Loki and Sylvie figure this out, and they run into Brad, and they enchant Brad so that Brad prunes Ravonna. They shut down Miss Minutes, and it seems like this has all been taken care of. So now the only really big problem is, well, the loom is still threatening to blow up, basically, and destroy all of the TVA. And cause probably mass destruction on the timelines, I'm imagining, too, because they're all kind of, like, converging into each other. However, OB and Timely did come up with a solution for this, and so as they attempt to retrofit the loom, they're trying to decide who's going to go out there. Victor Timely is like, look, I'll go out. This is, like, basically my destiny. I'm super psyched. goes out, and as they were saying, the time radiation is really bad out there. It's so bad, in fact, that Victor Timely immediately perishes. And following this, a crazy thing happens. I literally thought they sent out Victor Timely because, you know what? Makes sense. He's gone now, but he's not part of the main cast, and he's a variant of Kang / He Who Remains, so it's not that important. We have lots of other variants out there, so this is fine. This is fine. Just a variant. But no, then the loom reaches critical mass and literally, seemingly, in a blinding flash of light, explodes. Also seemingly killing everyone at the TVA. Fade to black for an awkward amount of time as all of us watching this episode stared at the screen and went, what did I just watch? What just happened? And that's the end of the episode. Cut to credits. So the first thing I want to come back to is the themes in the show, which I think, like I said, the major theme this season is loops, time loops. We see this apparent in the fact that Victor and Obi influenced each other's work. So that's a pretty strong time loop. We also see the time loop complete with Loki arriving into the future and having to prune himself, who arrived there from the past when he was time slipping. I feel like, based on what I've seen so far this season, one of my theories relates sort of to the time loops. So people are saying, like, where are we going to go next? Like, is this the MCU hitting a reset button in Loki and it's going to affect the rest of the universe? I don't think so, or at least not yet. I feel like this show could plant the seeds to do that, and I really hope it does plant some seeds to shake up the MCU, because I think we need a little shake up right now, obviously. But I think what's going to happen is we might just go back to the beginning of either season 1 or season 2. Some kind of loop. I think we might see a Groundhog Day effect from this. I don't think everyone's gone. Maybe everyone will be reset to their places on the timeline. Because people were theorizing that Loki's just basically going to go back to, like, being evil Loki. And Duck was saying, I forget if Uptown Duck actually came up with this theory or if he was saying it was one that he read. But it was the idea that Loki is going to walk out of the portal in, like, Avengers and basically be like, glorious purpose, and we're going to go back to that moment. But I don't think that's necessarily correct in maybe the way people are theorizing. However, I do think Loki might return to his place on the timeline, either from where he left or somewhere on there, and so will everyone else, and then they'll have to come together again. And then we'll have to figure out, I guess, where we go from here and what happened with the TVA. We still haven't seen where Mobius was and what his life was, and I'm really curious for that. I love that this episode closed that loop that we saw at the beginning of the show, but I'm also surprised that it happened in episode 4, because I definitely thought that was going to be like an episode 6 moment of the closing of the time loop. So they closed it early, which makes me think there's a greater time loop at play just because of the themes of loops that I've been seeing throughout these episodes this season. There's also so many good scenes in this episode. I gotta say, this is some amazing script work that they're doing in this show. This was a show that, as I was watching this episode, I started to read the script in my mind. So as people were saying the lines, instead of as much watching the scene, there were moments when I pulled myself out of the scene just to read the words on a page in my head. And there's just so much that isn't said, which really allows the actors to play. There are lines that are not fully formed thoughts, which I love. I feel like when you have a conversation with people in real life, unless we've thought it out before, it's premeditated and we wrote something down before we said it, a lot of the times our speech is not concrete because we're still thinking of what we're saying as we're saying it. We're coming up with these ideas as it's coming out of our mouth. And it might be built on something like what I'm saying right now that was established in my head, but it's not a fully formed thing yet because it's still bubbling in a way as you're speaking. It's very organic, a lot of the script writing in that way. And I mean, I think it's also the difference when people come over from Top 10 Nerd, where they've seen me host videos over there. And, you know, I write all of my scripts before I get up to present on that channel, right? So I do my research, I write my scripts, I go out, I have a teleprompter, I'm doing all that stuff. Whereas when I do videos like this, I maybe have some notes. I have some notes here in front of me. I have a synopsis here that I wrote so I could think about what that is. But other than that, I'm really just kind of talking. And you feel that a lot in these scenes, and it's really well done. I think for me, a couple of the key moments, B-15 having the conversation about like what do we do and how do we deal with the Minutemen and what are we gonna do with that group was a really great scene. Also, Sylvie calling out Mobius. Ooh, people are having reactions to that on the internet, being like, Mobius just wants some pie. And initially, I thought Sylvie was also going a little too hard on Mobius, but Sylvie is right, you know? I feel like there's so many lives on the line, and the fact that Mobius can be so chill is, I understand why she's upset. It's like, don't you care about any of this? Like, to you, it's just a job. You punch in. I mean, you never really punch out because of the TVA. Time doesn't exist for you. But for the rest of us, we're like moving through it. Like, you don't even know where your life is on the timeline. And I'm really interested to see if next episode, maybe we're gonna see some of that for Mobius and see why there's that reluctance for him to, I don't know, I guess really allow himself to connect with the timeline on a personal level. I also will say that I feel like Sylvie and Loki are the best scene partners in the entire show. Every time they have a scene together, I feel so many emotions. The scene with them in the pie area, the cafeteria area that Sylvie stumbles into and then is so frustrated that that's where she ends up, where she basically calls out the fact that the TVA might be the problem again, and Loki suggests that she just needs to have hope. Like, they can't just keep destroying things. And that, I mean, it's so interesting because Loki really is a character study on Loki. And Loki talking to his variant, Sylvie, this alternate version of each other, and them basically talking about, like, what Loki is. Like, Sylvie thinks we just need to destroy all this because it doesn't serve. We need to free people. Like, chaos is the way to sort of free these people. You can't just keep things in check. You can't just control people because then there's no free will. But Loki's argument of, like, we have to do that to keep people safe sometimes. We can't just let people go wild because it's too dangerous. And you need to trust things and have hope, and we can fix this. Just this conflict between them that represents an inner conflict in both of the characters is so great. And I'm just really rooting for both of them, even though they're coming from different camps. And I think the level of depth to all these characters has been amazing. I also really loved how Timely loves hot cocoa, because I also love hot cocoa. And I thought it was super cute. At first I thought it was going to be like some trick, like when he gives the other TVA agent like the cocoa, I was like, oh no, is this like a trap? Is this a trap? Is he going to go all evil? But no, he just really liked the cocoa and wanted to make it better, I think, and share it. And I was like, oh man, that guy got pruned after he probably just had like the best sip of hot cocoa. At least he got a final sip, I guess. But there are so many little levels that I feel like they build in for these characters. They feel so real. It's really great. And Ravonna Renslayer's true identity being revealed in this, and Ravonna's complexity as well, as we get to know her more, and Miss Minutes, it's extra. Also, I guess I was correct about that, because my theory was that Ravonna was going to be tied to He Who Remains in some way, or Kang, just like in the comics, which, yeah, in the comics, Ravonna is basically like Kang's like one true love. And although that's never really established here, I do feel like it's been implied, so I feel like that's also why earlier on Miss Minutes was jealous when she saw them getting closer together, because she knew that, like, that's kind of fate. Like, they always have this attraction to each other. So, the question is, where do we go from here? Episode 4. Is everyone dead? What do we do? I personally think this is going to come back to He Who Remains plan, and there might be a time loop somewhere in there. The idea of giving the TVA guide to a young Victor Timely, what was that about? Why did that plan happen? What's the purpose of it? It was He Who Remains' plan, which makes me think this is what leads He Who Remains to become the ruler of the TVA. So I don't know if this is going to somehow lead into Kang's movie, and this could be, we're going to be setting up sort of the Time Wars, maybe going back to that somehow. That happens actually in the future, and then gets resolved and then leads to the past. Could be something like that. That's the biggest theory that I have, because I do think it's interesting that Victor Timely, Uptown Duck and I were talking about this, and the idea that Victor Timely was outside when everything blew up and there were all the timelines there could be how we get all of these variants of Kang. And so maybe Kang is actually a variant of Victor Timely, and Victor Timely is the OG. Or I think we're gonna return to just like earlier on the MCU timeline, and like I said, everyone will be split up and they'll have to find each other, or a combination of these two ideas. But I do think we need to resolve what was He Who Remains' plan, how does it fit into everything, why was Victor Timely important, and giving him that TVA guide. And if he influenced Obi, also what does that mean? The fact that they influenced each other, we understand why Victor Timely was influenced, but how could Obi be influenced by Timely? Where did he get that from? That's what I'm wondering. So these are some of the big questions I have. I'm very curious to see where we go next. Very curious to also even see more of Brad. Just everyone in this is doing such a great job performance-wise, and I just want to commend the whole team. The show looks great. It's playing out amazingly. It's well plotted, well scripted, well acted, and the design is fantastic. So this episode, I mean, I think I gotta give it an 11 out of 10. Episode 4, I would need to go above 10. It's so good. Yeah, 11, I don't know, cups of hot cocoa out of 10. That's how good it is. 11 key lime pie slices out of 10. Oh, so good. All right, friends, that's it for me for this one. I'll see you for the next one. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay nerdy. Bye.